Hey Internet, this is Chuck from Dick Engineering, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. Today we're going to talk about my 2015 Camaro, which I obviously refer to as the Catmobile. This is the V6 version, and if you stick around to the end of the video, I'm going to tell you why I picked the V6. So hopefully you'll stick around to the end, because that's obviously the question everybody has when they hear, oh, which vehicle do you have? Oh, Camaro. Oh, which engine? Oh, V6. But I've got a reason, and we're going to get to it at the end. But this is the LT, so this is the V6 with the 6-speed manual transmission, and it is just about as base as the base model can get. I didn't order it new. I bought it with about 9,000 miles on it, and I paid just under 20,000 in 2017, I believe it was. So that was a big part of it right there, that I was able to get into the vehicle with under 10,000 miles for under $20,000. That was a big part of why the V6, but that's not the real reason. So the one thing that was a step up from the base model is the wheels. These are the standard aluminum mags that are upgraded from the stamped steel wheels. And I actually have seen the stamped steel wheels on one of these vehicles, and they're pretty cool. They're nostalgic, real retro look. They remind me a lot of the stamped steel wheels from the early 80s GM vehicles, like a Firebird, for example. As we do a walk around here, we'll talk a little bit about some of the mods we've done. Starting with in the front here, these spotlights here on the front. The spotlights in the front here were added on to cover up the plates that were on there originally. And the plates that were there are actually kind of stylish. They match the front bottom half of the grille. But these extra lights actually had quite a bit of extra illumination. If you turn it off of automatic mode and put it on manual mode, they give a really nice running light. Try and get a look at the finish here. We should have a pretty good chance to see how the color changes. Trying to highlight how some of the colors, like the green and the blue and the purple, come out of the metallic gray. Hopefully you can see it in there. But one of the neatest things about the paint is that in certain lights it'll look one color, and other lights it'll look completely different. So if it's in like a darker kind of a twilight, it looks like it's a dark green. But when it's bright and well lit, it looks almost like a gloss black. One of the things that has been done to this car is the 1-inch lowering springs. I'll try to get a view of what the lowering springs look like installed. These are the Petters lowering springs. Lowered it by 1 inch. Also, you can see there is the upgraded sway bar. Now, the sway bar, originally when I put it on the middle setting. So when I had the car lowered with the new springs, I also had them stiffen up the suspension. And we'll get to the overall effect of everything that I've done. We'll talk about the suspension and the engine. Kind of want to do a little bit of review later, talking about the overall impressions of the vehicle in its current state. Of course, in the front we have the upgraded sway bar. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get a good shot of the spring. There's the sway bar. But we'll look at the suspension from under the hood as well. You can kind of get an idea here, the gap that we're looking at now. So there was definitely a significant drop in the ride height. Luckily, though, I haven't encountered any bottoming out issues yet. So really, other than those two spotlights in the front, those are the only things that are really done to the outside. So we'll pop the hood and see what other things I've done to it. And here we are with the hood open. I got the engine cover mostly off. This rear cover piece is still installed, but the most of the engine cover is removed now, just so we can kind of have a closer look. But we'll put the engine cover on in a moment. Most of the mods that have been done are intake related. However, the exhaust has been also changed out, and we'll have a closer look at the exhaust in a moment as well. But starting from the engine here, we'll start at the intake, move our way inwards. This is the R-Tunes Racing cold air intake, and I've had this one on here just about since I got the car. It was one of the first upgrades or mods that I did to the engine. You know, I could definitely see an improvement as soon as I installed it. Not only did it make much more of an aggressive sound, but also a little more power. Moving our way further inwards here, and this part here was included along with the cold air intake. I like the matching red. You know, nice highlights under the hood. This is the throttle body. This is a ported throttle body. So this is the standard size throttle body here that mates up with the standard size intake, but has the ported interior as it connects up to this part here, which is also a mod air raid intake spacer. Now, as far as any power, you know, as soon as I installed this piece here, the intake spacer, the air raid piece, I found that it may not have added any extra power, but it definitely made it have an interesting sound. In fact, as soon as I installed it, I thought that I had done something wrong because it sounded like there was an intake leak. But after thoroughly searching for an intake leak, it turned out that it was just that piece that's added this new extra sound to it. So I don't know if it added any extra power, but it did make an interesting sound. Now hopefully we can see underneath the intake manifold. There we go. I think you can see it in there. We have the jack fab intake spacer. When I did the intake, the cold air intake, and the air raid spacer and the throttle body, I did all those parts all at the same time, including the spacer here. So it was a pretty major overhaul, and all those little pieces kind of added up to a pretty decent step in performance. But to be honest, I didn't see it all come together until I added the extra piece, also from Jack Fab, that goes down in here, that adds the extra ported piece into the intake. And I had the engine tune installed before I installed this piece here into the bottom of the intake. But as soon as I installed this piece, it felt like it brought all the other intake pieces together. There was an actual noticeable improvement. I'm not going to say it was 5 horsepower or 10 horsepower, but I could feel the difference immediately. So now I would say overall, all the intake manifold parts that I've done have had a significant performance improvement. The cold air intake, the intake spacer, the ported manifold, or the ported throttle body. I don't know if the intake spacer has had any changes in improvement, but it adds a noise, so there's that. The other mods we can find here, I've installed the Excel high-end ignition packs, and I connected up to the ignition packs or the iridium spark plugs. I think those were a really nice piece to install. I've got really excellent spark. I find that throttle response is fantastic and never run into any problems in cold or hot conditions. This is an oil catch can. The oil catch can, I think, is a required piece for this anyone who has a 3.6 liter engine, just because of the nature of the way that it runs the exhaust gases, or the I guess it's crankcase gases, if I'm right, back in through the intake. And I don't need to empty it very often, but anytime that I dump the oil out of there, I feel a lot better that it's oil that I'm dumping out and into the recycler that's not going back in through the intake. Since it's a GDI engine and you're not getting the detergent effect of the gasoline going in over the valves as effectively. So also one thing I wanted to add there, while I had the intake off, I also cleaned the valves. I found that all the valves were clean except for just a couple of them needed a little bit of extra work, but and I did that at around 35,000 miles. So I was happy to see that at 35,000 miles the valves hadn't had any serious impact. So I think we're pretty much done talking about the engine mods. And as I mentioned earlier, after I had done all the intake and exhaust upgrades, I ordered a trifecta engine tune. And I've had that engine tune installed for at least 2 years, I'd say, by now, and it's never caused any engine codes or any problems at all with the engine. So cheers to trifecta, and it added an immediate change and improvement. So very happy with that investment so far. So that's it. I think that's pretty much all the mods I've done to the Camaro so far. We'll have a quick look at the exhaust, and then we'll listen to it a little bit as we go for a short drive. One other mod that I didn't discuss was this piece here. This is an extension to the oil filter cap. Now the reason this is installed is because the intake manifold spacer here would prevent attaching on the engine cover, because the oil filter cap is part of the engine cover assembly. So in order to be able to use the stock engine cover, this piece here adds enough of a lift to the oil filter cap. So this part is actually from a Cadillac. So now it's one part Cadillac, all the rest Camaro. And through the power of post-production, we'll install the engine cover quickly. And there it is with the engine cover back installed again. As you can see, I've painted it red to match the cold air intake and the other red highlights. For a little road test now. Some of the country roads in behind where I live. The speed limit around here is around 45, so I'll try to keep the speeds pretty sane. We'll spin it onto the highway for a moment as well, just to kind of get a feel for the engine at full tilt at around 6,500 RPM. Now, when I first installed the tighter sway bars, there was definitely an immediate improvement in the way that the car felt. I could feel that it wasn't just stiffer, it was actually smoother, and that was even multiplied more when I installed the new springs. Now, not only did it lower it and it stiffened it a bit, but the actual feel of the car felt smoother. And we didn't have any way to measure this, but we drove out to mountains a couple of weeks ago. So it was around a 600-mile round trip, and it was really incredibly smooth, even on the rougher parts climbing up into the mountains where the highway can tend to be a little wavy. We felt that even though it was a bit stiffer, it was smoother. So big improvement not only in the ride feel, but overall handling as well. You can hear the cold air intake sound between the cold air intake and the throttle body. You can really hear the pickup. That was revving to around 4,000 RPM. So I promised to explain why I went with the V6 over the V8, and it's actually pretty obvious when you learn why I bought the car in the first place. Just before I purchased the car, I had been working in a position where I was full remote, and had been doing that for a number of years. During that period, I had a backup car that I'd bring to the office. I think we were supposed to be there once a month, so my monthly meeting, I would drive my trusty Saturn out to the office, which was only was only a few miles, so even though it was remote work, it really didn't save me a whole lot of commute. And even in the first few weeks of training when I was with the company, I still came home for lunch. So it wasn't like when I went full remote, it saved me a bunch of commuting time, but it just added that extra, the extra comfort of being in the home office environment. So during that time, I didn't really have a whole lot of driving to do, but then the company got purchased by a smaller company. So we would joke that the small fish ate the big fish, and they didn't really adjust super great. One of the moves they made was to bring back everyone from the remote work environment back into the office. That went over really well. So you can imagine that a lot of the folks who were living, in fact, someone who I knew with the company for nearly 20 years and retired at this point because of the decision, they were over an hour commute, and they did that for I think a couple of weeks, but they were at the retirement point, so off they went. And that was a good move for them, but for a lot of the folks that had to go back to the office, they were stuck driving what they had been using for their weekly commuter cars. And in my case, my car was not really the kind of thing that I would rely on a daily basis to get me to the office. So part of the return to work or return to office for me back in 2017 was getting a new set of wheels. And I wanted to make it something that was fun. So, a couple of cars that were on the list were the new Mini, the Fiat 500, and Camaro, and the Dodge. So I liked the Mini. The Mini had a good feel, and the Fiat had a good feel. Looks like we have some road work up here, and it's going to be interesting because it's a pretty narrow road to begin with. So we'll go ahead and kind of cruise through this road work here, see what's going on. But anyway, after I'd driven the Fiat and the Mini, they were okay cars, but they were both pretty small, and they really wouldn't make any kind of a weekend getaway car. So we decided to kind of expand the horizons a bit and look into a weekend getaway car, and that's where the Camaro came in. So it was a pretty easy choice. You can't really call the Fiat 500 a Barth in exactly a weekend getaway car. So when we test drove this one here, it had a really nice solid feel to it. It had much more solid and better handling than the Fiat. The Mini was pretty solid feeling as well, but the Camaro had just a really nice planted feel, and since it would be a primary commuter car, I figured that would be great. Now, I didn't really absorb the visibility problems when I purchased the car. I kind of took it for a test drive. I was able to see the test drive route because I'd driven the test drive route numerous times from this dealership. So by the time I had realized the visibility problems, the problem had been already something I couldn't really do much about. So, and this one does not have the rear camera. So by the time I had owned the car for a while, I'd realized the visibility problems was something I'm just going to have to live with. So that doesn't have anything to do with the V6 or the V8. The visibility is shit on both of them. So, but okay, so we went with the Camaro over the other three vehicles. Now I didn't mention the Dodge because there wasn't a decent Chrysler at the dealership when I was shopping. The only one they had there was the Hellcat, and it was ridiculous. So that wasn't even an option. And I really had to purchase a car that week because I was going back to the office in the following week. So when the Camaro choice came up, there were V6s and V8s. However, at the time, I wanted a manual transmission, and the only manual transmissions that they had at the time were the V6. So that was part of it, but was saying was that I was using it as a commuter car, and when I took the vehicle, when I took the V8 version out on a test drive, it was a ridiculous amount of power. I couldn't see any need to have any kind of thing like that on the 45 miles an hour. The entire commute I had at a maximum speed of 45 miles an hour. We're actually going to go onto the highway here. So, as I was saying there, this particular vehicle that was on the lot had less than 10,000 miles on it. It was mods the way I did is I wanted to make sure that anytime I was doing mods in the vehicle that there were ones that I could do. You know, I'm not in the I don't have the kind of training or background to do like a camshaft replacement or do any kind of head job on a vehicle, but I can take apart intakes and I can work on exhaust and I can do, you know, basic stuff like that. So I missed my damn turn. Oh well, we're gonna have to find a way to flip a bitch up here and get back because I missed my turn. That's alright. There we go. Revving up to around 6,500, almost 7,000 RPM there. So it's got enough power that I'm able to kind of have fun with it still. The suspension mods, you know, lowering it with the better springs and the tighter sway bars, and then adjusting the sway bars down to their tightest setting. It's made it a lot more fun to drive. It's got enough power to have fun. So, you know, I've got really no reason to have a V8. Now, if I was taking it out on the track, if this was something I was planning on entering races with, or, you know, I would never drag race on the street, but if that was the kind of thing that you were looking at doing, yeah, you'd need a V8. But I'm not doing any of those. So, for what I'm doing, what the car is here for, it does an excellent job of that. Drives excellent. It's been incredibly reliable. I'm at 46,000 miles. It does get you know, very well maintained. You know, excellent oil, changed very regularly. Now, anyone who has the V6 from GM, LFX, LLX, you know that you got to change oil on these things, otherwise you run into timing chain problems. So my rule of thumb here is that you know, I look at the oil life gauge, and when it gets down to 50%, that's basically time to change the oil. And it does mean I change the oil pretty regularly, but I change the oil pretty regularly to avoid having to do a timing chain problem pretty early. I think it's a pretty obvious trade-off there. Now, as far as the exhaust goes, I'm not sure how much you're going to be able to have heard there when it was going up to around 7,000 RPM, or now when we're just cruising quietly on the highway. But even now, still with the foam padding, the foam damping in the back end, and the new resonator installed in the H-pipe location, it still has a bit of a drone noise on the highway. It's not very noticeable now, but I can say for sure that when I first installed the exhaust and had taken out the H-pipe and put in straight pipe through that area, the drone was unbelievable. It was feeling a drill going into my head. So yeah, I didn't run it like that for very long before I took it back in to a local place here, and he installed the Thrustmaster resonating H-pipe, one here that goes under the transmission tunnel. So with the H-pipe in and this particular version of the Rev 9 exhaust, I find the drone is pretty small, and it does have a really nice sound when you're ringing it out up on the highway. So it was a nice trade-off. But if you're planning on doing an exhaust on this one, you know, be prepared to put that resonating H-pipe in, or the drone's going to get you. Now that's only on some of the exhausts. I've seen that effect being reported on other exhausts other than the Rev 9 that I've installed here. So you know, that may be different if you put like a higher end exhaust system in, or a full catback exhaust. You may not even run into that at all. But I definitely had it with this Rev 9 exhaust, and then resonating H-pipe largely resolved. So I'm pretty happy with the exhaust that I have so far. And we're back from our test drive, and I realized I didn't really give any description on the exhaust.
So this is the Rev 9 exhaust. This is the one that includes a muffler. There is a version of the Rev 9 exhaust that is basically just a straight pipe. But you can see this does have a muffler in it. It's kind of dirty under here, but the original exhaust there is attached on just before the cut, and is quite large. It actually occupies most of the cavity that's in behind there, so the original exhaust is quite large and heavy, and removing that exhaust reduces the weight by a fair bit as well. It went on very easily. I was very happy with how well the fit was. Got to use the original exhaust hangers, and now let's have a look at the resonator H-pipe. It's upstream from here a little bit. A little bit harder to see here, but you can see this is the resonating H-pipe thrustmaster piece, and it's a 2 in and a 2 out. So this comes just off of the cats and is connected in line where there used to be basically just a crossover pipe, but this basically adds a muffler on top of a crossover, and it continues downstream towards the Rev 9 exhaust system.
And she's all tucked away back in her parking spot. Thanks for watching, Internet. Have an awesome day.